The final Woj bomb has dropped concerning Adrian Wojnarowski's stunning departure from ESPN. What's next for NBA insiders? Also scheduled on the program this evening, plenty of discussion as well involving the WNBA expanding into Portland, Oregon. Unbrotherly love with the city of Philadelphia and the 76ers as the battle for a new NBA arena continues. And Patrick McEnroe in the Rod Laver Cup is also in some sort of hot water. That and more on a late night edition of Press Row, live right here and right now. This Coast to Coast Entertainment Network program is brought to you by Beside Me Bracelets. Our bracelets are handmade for any occasion. Use the promo code Coast to Coast for 15% off. Visit their website at besideme.com. Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry. With 24-hour shopping available, use the code 160920 and show her some love, like she showed us. Reaper Apparel Company, a commitment to live your most authentic way every single day. Visit reaperapparelco.com for more information and a look at all of their apparel offerings. And by Good Day Embroidery, your local source for custom embroidery, screen printing, and more. Log on to gooddayembroidery.com for more information. It's been a very productive and very entertaining Thursday of coverage on the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, wrapping up our Thursday edition of programming with a late night edition of Press Row, your go-to spot for all things involving sports media and the sports business side of the wide world of sports. As always, folks, yours truly, Callan McClurg, back with you folks here. It's been a very lengthy bit of a time off here again, as always. As you folks probably know, again, we're in the thick of the announcing season here. Just literally wrapped up a college soccer game roughly about, I'd say, 30 minutes ago, 45 minutes ago at the University of San Diego. And we're bringing you folks a late night edition of Press Row, again, covering all the angles of sports business and sports media for the next hour plus here on a late night Thursday, September 19th, 2024. Just want to, folks, kind of clarify real quick again, as we now are in fact in this time now where, again, I'm back to work now, working, basically Wednesdays through Sundays, 9 times out of 10 are working Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Usually those are my usual work days. We will still now, folks, make an effort to bring you Press Row. Probably not, though, at our usual 1 o'clock start time. Maybe look for us now in the evening following some of the late night or some of the other programs on Thursdays, where we're going to now, folks, try our best here to keep this program as consistent as possible. And that will probably be involving some more 10 o'clock or 10:30 start times here this evening. And for that matter, going forward, as we, in fact, get into the nitty-gritty of the upcoming announcing and work schedule for me, as we do, in fact, prolong here on Press Row, as we now, folks, inch ever so closer to 3,000 views on Press Row here today. As always, folks, on Press Row, we talk all things involving the wide world of sports, but from the angles, though, of a sports business and sports media perspective and the hot news involving the business and media side of the sports world again, folks. But as always, we invite your input. As always, questions, comments, concerns, hot takes, or cold takes, drop them in the live chat box. We'll make sure that you are first in line when we, in fact, get a chance to do so here on air tonight. And as always, folks, you can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram as well. And all of our handles are, of course, scrolling across your bottom line from left to right here this evening. With that, folks, in mind, jumping into our bulletin board of topics today, of course, the major talking point today, of course, is the final Woj bomb that was dropped of Adrian Wojnarowski, the longtime ESPN and, for that matter, NBA insider, announcing his intentions to retire from that role to move back to his old alma mater of St. Bonaventure University to take over with basketball operations. But more so, it's about the fallout of Woj's announcement about what this now means for NBA insiders as we, in fact, get ready for a new NBA season, which starts up operation very soon. With the NBA season approaching, Adrian Wojnarowski's stunning and sudden retirement has sent shockwaves through the entire basketball media world. As the NBA enters the final year of its current media right contracts, the departure of Woj will have a huge impact on the landscape as teams scramble to secure talent. Right now, Shams Charania, who was Woj's protege, is now poised to become a major player in the industry as his current deals with various media outlets are set to expire. The potential departure of Shams from The Athletic could also have a huge impact on the outlet's NBA coverage, as he has been a huge and key contributor and figure since joining in 2018. As it stands right now, ESPN is likely to pursue Shams, which could lead to a huge reshuffling of talent across several media outlets. Yahoo Sports, known for its elite sports coverage teams, could also be looking to capitalize on the changing landscape, with prominent reporters like Chris Hayes and likely acquiring and newly acquired Kevin O'Connor. Yahoo may seek to fill any gaps in coverage left behind by Wojnarowski's retirement announcement. First and foremost, folks, one to salute Woj for his hard work and dedication and wishing him all the best going back to St. Bonaventure University and hope it pans out there. But, folks, I do recall, I think, several months ago, there was a story put out by awfulannouncing.com that had talked about the lifestyle that Woj, Jeff Passan, Shams, and Adam Schefter, they all kind of live. And that life is not glorious. The final product on TV, what you read on Twitter, what you read on, and what you read when they write out their articles is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, I recall a couple of instances, mainly with the insider role of a team or a league. I recall best Jeff Passan was at a hotel when the MLB owners voted to lock out the players to begin the 2022 season. And Jeff Passan, being that insider, had to tell ESPN, you know, we have to halt the interview because I have to put out this tweet that the season has been suspended for this lockout. Then I recall Adam Schefter, I believe, was out with his wife having dinner when a big story broke and he had to jump on to ESPN outside the restaurant to give the breaking story about something going on in the NFL. And I think, folks, we all remember Woj, other than all the trades and all of his announcements. The one Woj bomb that will never leave my memory will be March 11th, 2020, where he broke the news the NBA will be suspending the remainder of their 2019-2020 season due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But I also kind of wonder, though, if Woj getting out, or is he getting out at the right time? Because, as we have alluded to, the shifting landscape. TNT out of the equation after this season. Amazon Prime Video enters the chat next season. NBC comes back to the forefront next season. They've re-upped their contract with ESPN. But also now I think that the free agent market now for the insiders, the Shamses, the Crispy Haynes, and the Kevin O'Connors now have ratcheted up because the main guy, the main lead actor of this insider group has called it quits to move on to a different chapter of his life. And I just think, though, it in a way resonates with me, though, when I read this story about the grind and the life of the inside reporter. You know, I think that there was something in that story that Awful Announcing had put out that Shams's screen time was beyond excessive. Same with Woj. Same with Jeff Passan. Same with Adam Schefter. That I think Shams even said that he really can't go on vacation to like get away from work because he's an insider. You know, these guys are up 24/7, it feels like, working 7 days a week. And that life is not glamorous, folks. You know, believe it or not, even the roles I'm in is not very glamorous, especially when you're working multiple days a week or you're working multiple events in a day. You know, I recall once doing 8 high school basketball games over 3 days, 8 games a day. You started at 8 a.m., you left the gym at 11:30 at night. You had continuous games back to back to back to back. I've had days where I've had 6 volleyball matches in one day. Back to back to back to back to back to back. But this, though, folks, will be a very interesting tidbit to keep an eye on about who forks out the big money for the next big insider star. Now with Woj being out of the equation. I think that number one guy now is Shams. I love, though, what Chris Haynes has done and what Kevin O'Connor has done. But I think that Shams now becomes the main NBA guy now. I really do think so. I just think for the fact of he's been kind of in a way groomed by Woj for this role. He's had his chances with Stadium. He's had his roles with The Athletic. That he's been groomed, though, I think, to become the new torchbearer for the NBA insider. Now, they won't be called Shams Bombs. I think they'll have some new name for it. But also, could you imagine, though, and I think this was in the story that Front Office Sports had put out today, or even over the course of the past couple days, could you have imagined if Woj didn't break the news of his own retirement? If that would have come from Shams or Chris Haynes or from Kevin O'Connor? Like, how weird would that have been that they break the news of the main guy of insiders calling it a career before he even announces it publicly? But now this does, I believe, now begin to open the door for some new faces because as we have been talking about, folks, a lot here, next season begins a brand new chapter in NBA media history. You know, that TNT relationship is over after 24-25. Though I know a lot of my friends and even myself are still ticked off about how the NBA has handled this entire situation involving TNT. But now who's going to be that new face of the NBA when it comes to inside reporting? You know, I know that this will elevate Shams and it also elevates Chris Haynes and elevates Kevin O'Connor. But now is there going to be like a new person who now becomes like another big name to fill the shoes of Woj in some capacity? But I think a lot of this does hinge, though, on the future of what the NBA is getting itself into when it now boils down to the new media right contracts, when it boils down to Amazon Prime Video, and it boils down to NBC. You know, I know that ESPN and NBC are already in a bidding war for Charles Barkley and that TNT staff, though I know that Ernie Johnson probably will say thanks, but no thanks. He'll probably go into retirement or still do baseball playoffs on TBS. But this year will be probably the last year that we all know the NBA as it is right now when it comes to the media packages and because of the people involved in it. You know, Woj calling it quits before the year begins. Now that leads us to Shams and Haynes and O'Connor. This will be very intriguing to see what does transpire. But again, wishing Adrian Wojnarowski, folks, all the best going forward. You know, to hopefully, in a way, give himself a chance to live kind of a normal life now where he doesn't have to be up at, 4 a.m. or up at 1 a.m. having to break the news that, Austin Reeves has been traded by the Lakers or something like that. But now who's next? And again, I'm mainly more intrigued about the new faces that we will now be linking ourselves with to NBA movement. other than Shams and Chris Haynes and Kevin O'Connor. But again, folks, Adrian Wojnarowski retires. Now who becomes number 1, number 2, number 3 in charge after Woj's announcement? Over, folks, now in college athletics. And this story broke about a week or so ago, and there is still a long way going forward here. But in the upcoming round, though, of conference realignment, the Mountain West Conference has suffered poaching at the hands of now the reborn Pac-12 Conference, seemingly out of left field. The Mountain West is now considering various options after losing their 4 best programs to the Pac-12 Conference effective next school year. The Boise State Broncos, Colorado State Rams, Fresno State Bulldogs, and the San Diego State Aztecs are set to depart the Mountain West Conference for the Pac-12 with 2 more schools potentially needed to keep the conference's current football status of FBS. Initial reports, though, interestingly enough, easy for me to say. But initial reports, though, folks, indicate right now the Pac-12 is looking at Memphis, Tulane, and the University of Texas San Antonio from the American Athletic Conference. However, though, two other schools have now popped up on the radar, involving Sacramento State and New Mexico State, having shown interest in joining the conference following the announcement of the 4 Mountain West programs departing for the Pac-12. The formation of the so-called SAC-12 committee appears to propel Sacramento State to FBS status, with plans for a new sports facilities and the necessary finances being put in place by the Big Sky Conference Hornets. The Aggies in New Mexico State, currently in Conference USA, could potentially fit well in the Mountain West, pending approval from the arch-rival UNM Lobos. The Mountain West, though being led by Commissioner Gloria Navarez, is set to receive huge financial compensation from the departing schools and damages from the Pac-12 Conference, providing resources to attract new members or retain existing ties or ones amongst ongoing realignment discussions. You know, this has been a very big talking point here, folks, in San Diego, and it depends on who you hear it from. If it's from one source, it's this. If it's one source, it's that. One source says, holy cow, what are you people doing? One says, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. The 3 schools mentioned from the American do not move the needle for me. Mainly geography reasons, but also football and men's basketball. Now, Memphis has been a very good basketball program for quite a while. Tulane had kind of a one-off in football this past season, and UTSA is still fairly new to the football landscape. But those 3 schools, for me, don't move the needle for a Pac-12 rebirth. And if anything, the thing I've been hearing from a lot of people, this isn't the Pac-12. You're putting the Mountain West Conference and dressing it in Pac-12 clothing. I even heard today from a friend of mine who works at a local station in San Diego. He called this the WAC 3.0. Even worse than the Mountain West 2.0. Now, I understand, though, why the Broncos, the Rams, the Bulldogs, and Aztecs bolted ship. But this is not the Pac-12 that your parents grew up with, or I grew up with when I was younger, or your grandparents grew up with. There's no USC. There's no UCLA. There's no programs in Tucson or Tempe. There's no rivalry in Washington or even in Oregon. All those schools are gone. And sadly, this would be the only way, in my opinion, that those 4 schools would even make the Pac-12. Especially San Diego State, who for so long, they were blocked by the 2 bigger SoCal powerhouses of USC and UCLA. But with them out of the picture, that's why they're there. Now, for the Pac-12, you still need 2 schools. Now, please do not sell me or try to sell me on Gonzaga men's basketball only to the Pac-12. That move to me makes absolutely no sense. Don't try to sell me either on St. Mary's or San Francisco men's basketball, because I think it has to be a package deal of the football program and men's basketball joins the Pac 12. And again, I don't see how you can poach away three Midwest schools to join a Pacific-based conference. Yes, you can tell me I'm wrong about, well, hey, what about the Big Ten poaching away the Trojans and the Bruins? Or the Big 12 poaching away U of A and ASU? Yeah, I get that. Fully invested in that, folks. Fully know that. I work in college athletics. I'm fully aware of that. But this story makes no sense to me. And again, I don't think, though, that the Memphis Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, and the UTSA Roadrunners, I hate to be that guy, but those three teams to me just don't move the needle for a Pac-12 rebirth. If it's for the sake of just keeping the FBS status, then fine and dandy. But I think that should be like plan X, Y, and Z. I look at this more of who can you look on the western side of the country. The one name I've been hearing a lot, though, and I'll get to the Hornets and Aggies in a second, but I've been hearing about Air Force. I've heard about UNLV, but that may have to be a package with Nevada Reno. I've heard some chatter about UNM. But I do believe, though, that it has to be the package deal. The main selling point for me, football and men's basketball. Again, do not try to pull this card on me or try to sell me on Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and San Francisco basketball only going to the Pac-12. I think, if anything, Zaga looks at the Big 12. But I still think, though, that even that doesn't move the needle either. Because then the West Coast Conference loses their biggest marquee draw for television on ESPN if Zaga bolts. And again, and also, again, Zaga not having football to me does not work. I think the football program and men's basketball program has to be a package deal. That's why those three schools in the WCC, in my opinion, take them off the board. The Bulldogs, the Dons, and Gales have no football program. So I would believe that right now I would mainly go this route. I go to Air Force first. Reason being is that it's a military university or military academy, which has global recognition. They're not a perennial powerhouse. I get that in football or men's basketball, but it's still a brand name out there. Then I do look at UNLV. Yes, the Rebels are not the sharpest tool in the shed in football or even men's basketball. Again, this is not the Jerry Tarkanian days when he was coaching the Running Rebs. But I think, though, Vegas, hot spot right now for sports, usually home to a lot of conference basketball tournaments, a growing sports presence since the Golden Knights came there. The Raiders moved in, the Aces came in, and who knows about Major League Baseball. I know they've had some. I know they have some turmoil going on, some changing in the guard in the athletic department. I still think Vegas is on my radar if I'm the Pac-12. Now, would you make the concession, though, to bring in the arch rival Nevada Wolfpack from Reno? Smaller city. Football is not that great. Neither is the men's basketball program, though they've had some flashes recently of being a pretty good program. Maybe. New Mexico. I know they're not a very good football program. Great basketball city. Great atmosphere at the pit. I think those are the four schools you look at first. Plan B for me would probably be about Sac State and the Aggies in Mexico State. Now, the problem would be, though, Sacramento State making that jump to the FBS, where now you would have to raise the number of scholarships. Plus, believe it or not, you now have to do something for Title IX for women's sports. Can Sacramento State really afford to do that? I don't think so. I've heard the rumblings of maybe like North Dakota State in both Montana and Montana State. Again, folks, that is a major jump. As someone who's worked in FCS football, that is a major jump. Going from FCS to FBS, because now you have to either offer scholarships or increase the number of scholarships while staying in compliance with Title IX. And some schools can't afford to do that. And I don't think Sacramento State wants to do that. They've been a very good Big Sky FCS program for quite a while. I do think New Mexico State makes sense to what they just got into Conference USA. But I think it'd be better than going to UTSA or Tulane or Memphis. You know, I read a very intriguing article by a writer in Seattle from the Seattle Times about this story. And one of the pros is like, well, you get more Central Time starts. That's cool and all, but is it worth it for a 11 a.m. kickoff in San Diego or Fresno or Boise at 10 o'clock in the morning Mountain Time? You know, or is it worth it playing at a high noon game in San Antonio? You know, I know there might be some pluses there with the Central Time Zone because of like ESPN maybe can throw you a bone here and there. I just don't think that's a risk you can take to go into the Central Time Zone. I think you have to keep this as a Pacific and Mountain Time Zone conference. And I do believe that, like I've been saying, though, that football and men's basketball has to be a package deal. That's where I think you really can't go to those three programs. Again, I know that Memphis has been great in men's hoops. Yeah, Memphis has had a good start to the football season. Tulane, again, kind of had a bit of a one-off last year. They were a very good team last season. And again, Texas San Antonio, they're still fairly young getting into the football realm. Again, they fought for a long time to get a program at UTSA. I would have to double check with one of my good friends who went to UTSA, because I believe it was her freshman year or sophomore year that the Roadrunners became a football school. And again, I don't know how their basketball program is. I just think the question marks outweigh the pluses if this Pac-12 rebirth stretches into Memphis, Tennessee, or down in Tulane and New Orleans, Louisiana, and even into San Antonio, Texas. I think my likely culprits would be Air Force, UNLV, New Mexico, Nevada, Reno, maybe. And I think a long shot would be Sacramento State. Just because there's so many other hurdles to jump over. Like I said, it's scholarship increases, and it's also making sure that you're still in Title IX compliance when it comes to the same opportunities for women's athletics at Sac State. But, folks, we'll keep an eye on this story, though. But this is going to be one that I don't think really is as good as advertised. Again, I've heard about this being the Mountain West 2.0. I've heard about this being the WAC 3.0. And basically the Mountain West being dressed in Pac-12 colors. Again, it's not the same Pac-12. I mean, if this move happened, just a couple years ago, I would have been on board for it. But when all the big name universities are now in the Big 10 or Big 12, again, this does not move the needle for me. Especially if now we're going to look at the Memphis Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, and the UTSA Roadrunners being the next big thing in the Pac-12. And again, do not try and sit here and sell me on just basketball only for Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and San Francisco. Because not having football is not the way here. in this new modern day college athletic scale or scope of things. Again, I believe that it would have to be football and men's basketball is a package deal. Then after that, it's the entire athletic department goes to that conference. Again, you're not going to be sitting here separating, different sports and different conferences. Don't pull a BYU for heaven's sakes and make your football program independent only and move everything to the West Coast Conference for 10 years. I don't see the benefit of that happening. And again, how does that benefit Gonzaga that their men's basketball program, maybe even women's basketball, leaves for the Pac-12 and they're still playing the same other schools though in every other sport in the West Coast Conference? Someone tell me the benefit of a program like Gonzaga, for example, even UConn, whose football program is MIA. And they make all their money off men's and women's basketball in Stores, Connecticut. How would the men's basketball or women's basketball program at UConn benefit from bolting for the Big 12, but keeping everything against or in the Big East? I just don't see the benefits. Again, question marks are outweighing the pluses as these dominoes continue to fall. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but at the end of the day, I really just think that this is where we are at this rate. Football, men's basketball, package deal with the entire athletic department. Not casting them off like it's Survivor for 36 days with no food and water to a deserted island. Everyone has to be a package deal. All right, couple of thoughts here from my good man Brent DeMoss, who first says, wait a second, the Pac-12 was a big-name conference now. I heard that some sports are in different conferences, like SDSU basketball stays in the Mountain West, but other sports jump to the Pac-12. Brent, pretty close. Now, what actually happened, Brent, before this whole Pac-12 thing came to fruition? And also, Brent, with the implosion of the Pac-12, my friend, and you might know this very well, but because the Mountain West Conference did not sponsor men's soccer, the Aztecs men's soccer program played in the Pac-10/Pac-12 until the implosion happened. Now the Aztecs play in the WAC against the likes of UNLV, Dixie State University, the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, Utah Valley and Utah Tech University, and some other programs in the Rocky Mountain area and in Texas. But, Brent, I believe, though, this would be an entire move of every sport from the Mountain West for SDSU to the Mountain West, to the Pac-12. And I don't think that that is a move that I'm necessarily on board for. And I think, again, Brent, it depends on who you talk to. Again, if you talk to people I know who work at one radio station, they were like, what are we doing here? The other one was like, oh, this is beyond amazing for San Diego State. It's a very weird catch-22, I guess, Brent. Because this would have been a great move maybe 2 to 4 years ago when you had SC, UCLA, U of A, ASU, Oregon, Washington, Oregon State, and Wazoo. But the fact that all of those programs are now in different conferences. Again, Brent, this is not the Pac-12 that we grew up with. This is not the Pac-10 we grew up with. So I know that there's a lot of financial stuff there, and I get all that malarkey, folks. But again, I just don't think that Memphis, Tulane, and UTSA, they don't move the needle for me. Again, I just hate to kind of be the guy with the steel chair just beating the chair over the Green Wave and Roadrunners and Tigers. But for them, I don't see the benefit, though, of traveling across time zones to come play, San Diego State, for example. And again, I don't think that moves the needle for SDSU football fans to come watch UTSA play or Tulane or Memphis. Yeah, yes, have the Aztecs played the Roadrunners in several bowl games? Yeah, but guess what? All those games were in Frisco, Texas. They were practically UTSA home games. That's why I don't see how those three schools move the needle. I think you would have to, again, just kind of in a way, make this the Mountain West 2.0, but in Pac-12 clothing. That's just how it feels, Brent. And again, I don't see how this is such a great thing. This would have been a great thing if this was the same Pac-12 of like 5 years ago. And again, Brent, I think mainly more than anything else, though, is I don't see how Sacramento State is even involved in this thing. You know, I mainly don't see, though, how Sac State, Montana State, or even North Dakota State, they're probably thinking, how did we get roped into this mess in the first place? And for New Mexico State, they just got into Conference USA a couple years ago. So I don't really, folks, and again, maybe I'm just being, I'm way off base. I just don't see how this is such a beneficial move. Mainly, I think, for all four of these universities. When it boils down to academics, when it boils down to enrollments, and it boils down to even some of the, I heard stuff about, television being a big thing about this. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, folks. But again, I just don't see how this really is such a, throw the parade down Broadway here in San Diego for the Pac-12 now becoming into San Diego TV territory. Again, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But I think you all know my thoughts on realignment and that it's not, and that it won't pan out. This would have panned out circa 2021, maybe 2019, 1994, 2004, but not 2024. Give me a break. Shout out to our good man Jack Braun, also joining us here tonight as well. Thanks as always, Jack, for being here as well, my man. Good to hear from you and see you. With that, folks, on to the next topic in the WNBA. Another expansion team is on the horizon, and they're heading back to an old market, folks, in Portland, Oregon, which will be the league's 15th franchise debuting in 2026. They'll be owned by the current owners of both the Sacramento Kings and the NWSL's Portland Thorns, which is the Bathel family, who, again, made the deal to bring in the league back to the City of Roses in 2026. League Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has expressed her desire to expand the league to 16 teams in the coming years, with other potential target cities now involving Philadelphia, Nashville, Denver, and somewhere in South Florida. Portland had previously hosted the then-named Portland Fire from 2000 until 2002, before the franchise folded operation, and was also previously in talks to land the new expansion team last year, but discussions fell through with a local entrepreneur, Kirk Brown. The city will also reportedly recently approved renovations to the Moda Center, where the new franchise will play alongside the Portland Trailblazers through at least 2030. The Portland franchise now joins the Golden State Valkyries, the unnamed Toronto franchise, and other potential expansion locations mentioned already by Commissioner Engelbert. While the league's growth has been significant, fueled by a strong draft class of Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and Cameron Brink, increased attendance, I should say, and lucrative media rights deals with the NBA as well, starting this upcoming season. Long overdue that a former city or area of the WNBA gets a second chance. Again, folks, you probably heard me last time on here when we talked about the expansion team in Toronto, about how one big city that's been omitted on these lists was Houston. Again, the Comets were the darlings of the early days of the league, winning 4 straight championships. But I think, though, now that Kathy Engelbert, though, has not really noticed the trend, though, but I do believe, though, folks, that it's good now and great, I think, that we're seeing cities that were once a part of the league fabric kind of getting a mulligan or a second chance now. Because, again, when the Fire came in 2000, folks, that's 24 years ago that the team came in. And again, like I said, though, Portland, I don't think really got a chance to embrace the fire because of the financial backing. And that was also, folks, at the time when the league began to break away from NBA team ownership. And they would go to like third party owners, for example, like Joe LaCobe, who now owns the Valkyries in San Francisco, starting up play in 2025. That was the one problem that I think doomed a lot of these franchises, like the Detroit Shock, like the Orlando Miracle, who now are the Connecticut Sun, Detroit, Houston, Sacramento, even Portland, that once the Kings, once the Blazers, once the NBA team said, okay, enough's enough, we're losing so much money running this operation, and they severed ties, that's where I think things went down the drain. But again, folks, like I have long said, the popularity now, folks, of women's sports cannot be diminished. And I think now that with where things have gone, largely because of Callan McClurg and because of Angel Reese and Cameron Brink and this very great draft class and the increased attendance that we have been seeing, folks, where we've had repeated sellouts of NBA arenas for WNBA games, the brand new media rights deal, though, with the NBA. And even despite all the negativity and all the bad publicity because of the fake and untrue Clark versus Reese rivalry. What a time again to be a women's sports fan. And I'm very happy again for those fans in Portland who, again, did not really get a chance to really, I think, embrace women's basketball at that time. Because after 2002 is kind of when, again, those ownership groups broke away from the WNBA products. And again, folks, I think Kathy Engelbert, despite her recent commentary, just needs to be given some praise. I do agree, though, that she could have handled her commentary differently, though, concerning her thoughts about Clark and Reese, though, and how it's been very out of control, though, with, racist remarks, and people have been making death threats against Angel Reese, and how the Sky have been portrayed as the villains of the entire season, and so on and so forth. But Kathy Engelbert is about to add 3 new franchises within the next 2 years in the WNBA. San Francisco, again, a market that had the Monarchs for a long time in Sacramento, who won a championship up there, who had great crowds at Arco Arena. Now we're going to Toronto to go across the border to a very, I think, intriguing market. And now we're going back to Portland. Now, where will Team 16 go? I'm not sure. I do believe, though, that Houston has to be on the radar. Now, I'm not very as high on Philadelphia as you might think, as we'll get to in our next story. Nashville is a little intriguing because, again, of the great women's basketball following. Folks, for a long time, people scoffed at the notion of the Connecticut Sun being playing women's basketball games in Unkinsville, Connecticut. Because, wait a second, the UConn women are way more popular than the WNBA. Well, now I would say when you get players like Dejanay Carrington and you build a pretty damn good team with DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas, now all of a sudden people are recognizing the Sun finally in Connecticut. Denver is kind of a bit of an intriguing option too. The Crockies will probably be involved. And I think South Florida deserves another chance. Because again, that market, the Orlando Miracle, again, I don't think got a chance to really embrace the franchise. When the Magic said, nope, we're done with this team, we're going to move them to Connecticut. And I also think, though, that the ownership has to be there. And I think nowadays it is. Joe LaCobe, Larry Tannenbaum, and now again the Bathel family, who again has co-ownership of the Sacramento Kings and also owns the Portland Thorns of the NWSL. Huge. The deep pockets will help. Do not try and sell me on like Boise, Idaho. You need to go to places like Philly, Nashville, Denver, South Florida, or Houston. Or for that matter, back to markets that had the league but weren't able to keep the franchise around, a la Detroit. I'd even give Salt Lake City another chance. I do believe that where we are now, folks, in 2024, any market in the WNBA who had a franchise one point in time, they deserve to get a second chance at it if the right price is right and if the right ownership steps forward. Not Boise, Idaho, in the middle of nowhere. Houston, Salt Lake City, Utah, Portland, Oregon, Orlando, Florida, Houston, Texas. Maybe you branch to new markets like Philadelphia, Nashville, Denver, Milwaukee. Go back to Cleveland. That's where I think we are right now at this rate. I've heard about Louisville, Kentucky being on the radar because of how great Louisville women's basketball has been. And I think, though, that those I think now that those old markets, I think, folks, if you, I've long thought, if there's an announcement about Houston, Texas, I think those season tickets are sold out like that. Because I think at some point in time, between 97 and 2008, the Comets were the hot ticket in Houston. The Astros, yeah, they had their run. The NFL was gone at that time to bolt to Tennessee with the Oilers. The Rockets had their time in 94 and 95. And the Houston Aeros were still playing at a high level in minor league hockey. But I do believe if the minute that the Houston Comets ever were to get announced as a new franchise, I think Toyota Center is sold out right away. I really do. And the reason why that I think Portland is a great spot, other than just the past history with the Fire and the Blazers being there, and why I would pick Portland over like some small town like Boise, Idaho, for example. Women's Final Four. Portland draws sellout crowds to that tournament every single year when they host it at Moda Center. And not just that, the Portland women's basketball program in the WCC has won, I believe, 2 of the last 3 conference titles, and they've been filling up Chiles Center pretty damn well recently. And don't even try to sell me about Portland basketball fans driving to Seattle, Washington to watch the Storm. Why would they do that? Portland and Seattle are just like San Diego and LA, rival cities, because of the rivalry between the Timbers and Sounders. Portland and the Sonics had a great rivalry too in the heyday. That's why you go to a market like Portland. To give Portland basketball fans another avenue to cheer for basketball in their city. Not named the Blazers or the Pilots. And again, I think it's mainly being done because Portland never again got a chance to really hug and love and kiss the Fire because they were gone after 2 years. But now where we are in 2024, ownerships like the Bathel family, who have the pockets to put a team back in Portland. That's huge for the WNBA. And you know what gets lost in the shuffle about this whole thing? Now that you're expanding to three new teams, maybe 4 eventually, you're adding roster spots. Do you know that only 144 players make the WNBA currently with their 12 teams? Do you know how many big-name players that I have known and covered in my time as a WNBA fan and WNBA podcast host for the latter part of 4 years, if not longer recently? How many I have known that are now out of the league because of the lack of roster spots? Sierra Burdick, Megan Simmons. You know, a lot of like really stud college players that I really thought would be in the league 10, 12 years. But because of the lack of teams and roster spots, they've gone on to play overseas or 3-on-3 or in the upcoming new athletics or, the Athletes Unlimited or the new league that Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart are starting called Unrivaled. Only 144 players, folks, make the WNBA teams in total across 12 markets. Now you add 3 more cities. Now you're giving players a better chance to make a roster in San Francisco, in Toronto, or even in Portland. But as far as it goes for the next city, folks, I do believe you have to, I really, truly believe, go back to another old market. And I think Houston has to be number one. It's a dynasty. It's the name. It's the players. It's the 4 titles in 4 seasons with Tina Thompson, Kim Perot, God bless her soul, and, Cheryl Swoops and Cynthia Cooper, who all played in Houston, to sell out crowds at Compaq Center or the Houston Summit. But again, folks, huge news for the WNBA, again, going to Portland, Oregon for the second time in a matter of about 22 years coming up in the 2026 season. They will join, they'll be joined in 2026 with the new team in Toronto, while the Golden State Valkyries will join in 2025, who, by the way, in San Francisco, have already sold 17,000 season seat deposits. That's why you go to a market like San Francisco, Toronto, or Portland, and not Boise, Idaho. Hate to be the bearer of bad news. We will, folks, switch gears to what is going on with the Philadelphia 76ers after a major bombshell broke about the Sixers potentially looking to move to New Jersey. The Sixers are now facing more challenges in their quest to build a new $1.55 billion downtown arena in Center City of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. City Mayor Sherrill Parker recently announced an agreement with the team to move forward with the project, but opposition from the local Asian American community and concerns about gentrification in Chinatown are still looming obstacles. The city council still needs to approve the arena, and the outcome is right now uncertain. In the meantime, Eagles legend Jason Kelce criticized the proposal and the team's ownership group led by Comcast Spectre, who currently right now is the owner of the Wells Fargo Center and the NHL's Philadelphia Flyers, and also where the Sixers currently play their home games, has offered to partner with the team on a new arena at the existing sports complex in South Philadelphia, which is currently home to Lincoln Financial Field, Citizens Bank Park, and also the aforementioned Wells Fargo Center. Despite the efforts from both sides to solidify their plans for development, a resolution has not yet been reached. HBSC, the Sixers ownership group, is focused on the new downtown arena, while Comcast Spectre is open to the team remaining in South Philadelphia if they decide it is in their best interest for the ball club. The future location of the Sixers arena remains uncertain, and ongoing negotiations and opposition from various parties still exist at this juncture. Yeah, this is loony. Yeah, this is one that is going to be very interesting to follow, folks, because this has been kind of a 3-ring circus over the last, I'd say, 6 to 8 years, maybe. There was a major snafu that broke out, I want to say, fairly recently, before I believe they did some renovations at Wells Fargo Center, that the Sixers and the bank were the arena were at a major crossroads. I mean, like a major, major crossroads, where the Sixers literally shrank the size of the logo that read Wells Fargo Center to where you couldn't even, they pulled it off the floor. It was that petty between the Sixers and the building and the arena. But again, folks, this is just a major challenge. And again, I don't really buy the notion of the NBA going back to New Jersey, just for the fact of the Nets kind of left on bad terms. Is the Izod Center still even in shape to host NBA basketball? I don't see the NBA going back to New Jersey, sadly. I really don't. But I also just wonder, though, if the Sixers are getting tired of being left behind at the arena. And that, folks, does happen a lot, though, when you have multiple franchises playing in one building. Case in point, look at the Clippers for so long playing at Crypto.com Arena in downtown LA. The Lakers and Kings always got priority over the Clippers because the arena was owned by their ownership group, which is AEG Global. And the Lakers and Kings got top priority, then the Clippers, and then the Sparks. And in some cases, it would even be the Avengers getting it when they had arena football there. And that pecking order does happen a lot in a lot of these, markets that have, like Denver, for example, LA, Detroit, even here in San Diego. That was a bit of a contentious point, though, too, with, certain organizations who got, higher priority because of ownership over number of games on the home schedule. And a team moved down and built their own arena for them to play in. But this, folks, is just very interesting about what the Sixers are trying to accomplish. I would hate to see them leave that part, though, of Philadelphia, where, again, you have every arena and stadium venue in the same parking lot with the Phillies ballpark, the Eagles football stadium, and then Wells Fargo Center, where the Wings and Flyers and Sixers all play their home games. I think it just makes sense for all that to be there because I think that all the residents who live in Philly are just used to going there already. But I'm just not sure, though, about how this plays out. And I'm very, though, folks, glad to see, though, that that Comcast and Josh Harris's group who own the Sixers still want to keep that door open of like, hey, if you want to try it, go for it. But if you need help or you can't get it done, our door's open for you. I do like seeing that come to fruition where we still have that in place. But I don't think, though, the Sixers are going to bolt for New Jersey. I think, though, for the fact of that the NBA probably doesn't want to even bother with that market. I don't even know if Izod Center is still even standing in Newark, New Jersey. But also, would you even bother wanting to even infringe upon the Devils at Prudential Center? I don't see that being feasible either. And I should mention, by the way, that it's actually been renamed back to Meadowlands Arena, where the Nets and Devils used to play. But even then, the last time an NBA game was played there was 2010. And it also does appear, though, that the arena is still standing there, but it's not been used for anything since 2015. So that building is totally dormant. That's not ideal for the NBA to even look at that at that facility. So there's already an empty arena that has been closed down for almost a decade in New Jersey. Why would the Sixers even bother? Why would you bother even threaten to even go to New Jersey? I think they can get this worked out. I think this will, in fact, get worked out, but it will probably be a while. I think with the pushback from the local community, from the Asian American population, what it might mean about Chinatown kind of in a way losing its luster because of this new arena being built there. Again, I totally get that. And also, again, you know that I'm also anti-public money for stadium projects, arena projects too. And if that's a factor, I say not going to happen. Don't see it. We'll see what does come out of it, though. One final story, folks. You cannot be serious. Yes, the man himself, Patrick McEnroe, is officially announcing his intentions to step down as the vice captain of the Team World at the upcoming Rod Laver Cup after this weekend, emphasizing that the tournament is not merely an exhibition tournament. He notes that players take great pride in the event, which is tennis's equivalent of golf's Ryder Cup, showcasing some dream teams over the years. Though the Laver Cup, now in its 7th edition, is still establishing itself compared to its longstanding golf counterpart tournament. The biggest challenge right now for the tournament is its place in the calendar of a packed tennis schedule, sandwiched between the Davis Cup and also the U.S. Open. Patrick suggests that the Laver Cup and Davis Cup could adopt the Ryder Cup model of being held every other year to avoid conflicts with each other and to make the event more meaningful. Despite offering financial incentives to players, not all top players partake in this tournament due to the demanding tennis schedule. McEnroe acknowledges the scheduling concerns faced by players like, for example, Iga Swiatek, but also believes that changes are unlikely. Ultimately, he encourages players to choose their tournament appearances wisely in pursuit of their ultimate goals going forward. Yeah, tennis is a very congested sports, folks, with its schedule. Very grueling, very daunting, and a very long year, starting off, I believe, around Christmas time in Australia and all the way through the summer and beyond the U.S. Open and now even to the fall. But I think that Pat's right, though, that you really can't, I think, have two tournaments of the same format in the same season. And I think the Davis Cup has more of a meaning, I think, when it comes to tennis. Because again, the Laver Cup's 7 years old, though, and I think the Davis Cup has come to San Diego multiple times. They had it here at Petco Park one year where Team USA played. I think Team USA played England, I want to say, in the Davis Cup. It's come here several times to Barnes Tennis Center in Point Loma. That I think, though, that Pat's right, though, that you can't have two tournaments with this USA versus the world, USA England, USA Britain, USA Australia, USA Germany format in the same year. You would have to make it like the Ryder Cup and President's Cup where it alternates every other year. But the main thing, though, that does hurt, though, and I think, folks, this is with the Laver Cup, the Davis Cup, and the Ryder Cup, and the President's Cup in golf and tennis. If you're not getting the big names, good luck to you. And when you can't get like Carlos Alcaraz or Jurgen Skinner or any big name tennis players to play in the Laver Cup or the Davis Cup, then that's where I think things get a little bit hairy. Is which one has the bigger, like, brand name? I'm not a big tennis guy, but I've heard of the Davis Cup. The Rod Laver Cup, not so much. And I'm not surprised that McEnroe's stepping down as being the vice captain because it's being treated like an afterthought. Because, as alluded to in bullet point 3, it's the packed schedule. And also the fact that the Davis Cup has a bigger brand name than the Rod Laver Cup. And I think the best way that we can save the Laver Cup is what Pat McEnroe suggested. 1 year it's Davis Cup, the next year it becomes the Laver Cup. Because again, you don't want to have these two events clashing every tennis season. Because what's the benefit if the Davis Cup draws more people on television and the Laver Cup is kind of like the LIV golf event of the tennis schedule? Again, you can offer all the money you want for Alcaraz and, maybe some of the retired guys like Andy Murray to play in the Laver Cup, but they still may not partake because of their demanding schedules. And I don't see any changes coming, though. But something should be done, though, to avoid the conflict, like the conflict of interest of, am I going to play Davis Cup or am I going to play Laver Cup? You don't want those two competing things going on. It's not like AFL, NFL, the NBA and ABA or any of that stuff. But it's more about the brand name and also what's going to get you more money. Right now, that would be the Davis Cup, I'd say. And I don't think that Pat McEnroe leaving behind the Laver Cup's going to move the needle. Don't see it happening anytime soon. Again, I applaud the effort, but still, I just don't see the benefit of having two tournaments of the same format competing in the same year. That'd be like there being multiple Pro-Am tournaments in golf, for example. But we'll see what happens, folks. Again, with Patrick McEnroe again stepping down as the vice captain of the team of the Rhodes team at the Rod Laver Cup after this weekend, emphasizing that the tournament should not be treated as an exhibition. But again, so many problems have plagued this tournament due to the fact that players still take great pride in the tournament. But again, financial constraints, scheduling is also a huge factor, and that he's looking more at this being a potential golf style version of the President's Cup or the Ryder Cup, where it's again team play, USA versus the world or whatever in the sport of tennis. With that, folks, in mind, again, glad to be back with you folks here tonight on Press Row. Again, we're going to, folks, do our best now to come your way here regardless of scheduling. Thursdays in the evening or afternoon. Again, we'll do our best to keep you folks informed about that as we do, in fact, chug along into another day and week of programming here on C2C. Major thank you again to our good man, or to our good guys, Brent DeMoss, and to Jack Braun for joining us here tonight on Press Row, folks. We'll see you folks back here on PR next Thursday. Again, we'll have hopefully have a bit of a better grasp, though, on our scheduling come next week here for Press Row to get back into the fold here on C2C, folks. Until next time, Callan McClurg saying good night here from San Diego, California. Folks, until next time, have a good night. We'll see you next time. Till then, bye-bye.